Okay, having done the backyard mystic, um, this is the neglected aspects of information concerning Sufi studies. I ran into Idries Shah's material about 40 years ago and inquired in his book and asked about to know more. And if you're interested in knowing more, I would suggest you write ISF, Idries Shah Foundation, and ask. However, keep it simple. They're not interested in people, looking for another religion. They're not interested in people who are looking for mysticism. They're not interested in people who want to join a group. There's a lot of things they're not interested in. So let's say, what are they interested in? They have the Sufism promoted by Idries Shah, because it's like Christianity. There are many different sects, or Buddhism, there are many different sects, or Hinduism, there are many different sects. And this one in particular is promoted by Idries Shah and the material that he accumulated in teaching stories and many other books, the Sufis, podcasts, all kinds of Caravan of Dreams, a teaching story, one of my favorites. And so they have something to offer. And the question is, are you interested in what they have to offer? And since you don't know, don't act as though you do. Because, what are they going to do if you're interested? You indicate you're interested in something, and they don't offer. That's not what they're offering, okay? So if you want to know what they are offering, ask them very simply, what is this Sufism all about? That's all. Keep it simple. Give them something they can work with. And when they write you, follow their directions. Pure and simple. Now, the reason I'm writing this or recording this is because you don't really know what to expect. And they are bringing Eastern mysticism here, or Eastern Sufism, and a Westerner may think it's kind of mystical, or they need to travel to the East to get a teacher, or a lot of I would say things that aren't true. Some people call it mysticism. From my experience, I've never seen any mystical things. Yes, I have had and experienced many, many things, but there's always been a causal agent. In other words, I don't recall anything where somebody hasn't caused something to happen. Sometimes people will say, refer to something as a miracle. Well, what exactly are you talking about? Are you saying that cause and effect was not observed? I mean, there was no cause. There was an effect that had no cause. Now, that to me would be a miracle, right? But I have never seen such a thing. I've seen some very very, very unusual and experienced some very, very unusual things. But in this area, but I have never seen anything that was not obeying the law of cause and effect. And I think that's important, that when they say they've brought Sufi mysticism here, a lot of Westerners will have it in their mind as though it's something like magic carpets, or, remember the stories of flying magic carpets and things. And but again, even if there was flying magic carpets, somebody is doing it, you see. And that's a very important note, is that don't expect something that has no causal agent, because everything does. Now, one of the things that, the first things that would be suggested to a Westerner anyway, my being an American, it happened to me, is to read Idries Shah's works, and most specifically to read the teaching stories. And want to make a remark that the quote teaching stories, in the East, it sounds like there was something called a word, and it was translated into teaching stories here in the West. However, the teaching stories, as they say, actually cause permanent changes within the brain. They are specifically designed, each one, to do certain things. And you do not have to understand it. You do not have to remember it and commit it to memory. But they do cause permanent changes in your brain, changes in synapses, and these things, of course, anytime you create new synapses, the brain will generalize things. So this is a very interesting phenomena within the brain, and teaching stories do this. But there's no sequential teaching going on. Like if you're in mathematics, you start off with addition and subtraction, and you go to division and multiplication and long division, and then you go to algebra and geometry, and it's a sequential step by step. But that is not true in teaching stories. As they say, it's kind of a shotgun approach where, the comment about the word teaching is kind of a translation of a word that I don't know where it comes from. I don't know the word in Persian or Arabic or whatever language it comes from, but it seems more like it might be, I don't know. It seems like mental calisthenics. It's just your mind, goes through some kind of a movement, and it learns that movement, so to speak, by creating new synapses, and these are permanent changes. And I will concur that is true, having read teaching stories some 40 years ago. And now, if I go and reread these things, I can tell that my brain has experienced these things. And so when you read teaching stories, it's important that you know that these are books are not novels to be read as novels. They're not to be intellectually scrutinized. they're to be physiologically experienced. For instance, the one about Nasruddin, their comical character, who's on his hands and knees in the street and looking for something, and some friends come along and get down on the hands and knees to help him look, for his for his glasses, And after a few minutes, one of the friends says, "So whereabouts exactly did you drop or leave your glasses?" And Nasruddin says, "In the kitchen." And they're out in the street, right? And so the friends say, "Well, what are you doing out here?" And Nasruddin says, "Well, there's more light out here." And so you kind of can feel the humor, but at the same time, it's kind of like honey with a medicine. It goes down. This actually will cause changes in your brain. But these stories are maybe only a paragraph long, maybe a quarter of a page, and so you might be inclined to just read one and read another and read another and read another, like this. But the brain needs to experience physiological changes, and it's like if you eat, you're eating a sandwich, you eat a bite, you chew it, and you swallow it. Tastes good, goes down, and it goes into your digestive system physically, and then from there the nutrients go out into various parts of your body. Now, in teaching stories, it's similar. Is that you read and you see, as you know, the Nasruddin stories the story that I just quoted, more or less, that you feel the humor, the pleasantness, and it goes down, and then instead of putting another one right on top of it, like as you're eating food, you allow that to just for a moment or two to I don't know, sink in, or, because you're not going to understand what has happened to you. But as the Idries Shah says, there are permanent changes, and you do not even have to understand what happened, and you won't any more than you understand a sandwich. It's a physiological occurrence that you eat it, and your digestive system handles it for you, and you don't understand it. You don't have to, but you assimilate it as an experience, not as an intellectualization. Intellectualization of a sandwich would be you have a scientific diagnosis assessment of all the assay of all the nutrients. You come out with the proteins and other things. Well, that does you very little good if you're hungry, and that's the whole point. There are scholars who look into Sufism, the Idries Shah Sufism, and they analyze it and diagnose it and everything, and it's like a fly. You pick it apart, the wings to inspect it, and the legs and on the eyes and everything. And then in the end, you see that it doesn't fly anymore. Small wonder. However, the people who are doing this to Sufism, that's kind of their business, perhaps as academics, and they do it every day to things, and without realizing, as far as Sufism is concerned, it's experiential, and there's no other way for it to be. As Idries Shah's foundation said, Sufism is the creation within an individual. Sufism is created within an individual, and that is the case. And so in these stories, so you read them and you begin to pick up this phenomena of reading a story and feeling it, and then going on to another. So you don't read it as a novel. You may read only a few a day, etc., something like that. And that's part of learning how to learn, as the Idries Shahs will say time after time. Learning, how to learn, that's part of it, is knowing how your physiology learns, so to speak. And little by little, you will pick up a certain flavor or impact of these stories, hopefully, and begin to sense their impact, so that if you look at some other literature of some kind, you can tell if that has that impact. And that's a very, very important distinction or perception for you to pick up, because this Sufism, you have to become aware, or they're trying to make you become aware of certain perceptions or organs of perceptions that you're unfamiliar with using, in order that you can mature spiritually. I hate to use the word spiritually because there's so many dysfunctional definitions and associations with it. But your DNA, your DNA orchestrates various stages of maturation, physical and mental, and each one you have to do certain things for in order to mature. And your DNA, will put in requests for food or certain foods, and so you have to eat those foods. It's so much orchestrated by your DNA. And the same is true in maturing in this other area, spiritually, so to speak. Anyway, so this is experiential. It's just like when you go through puberty, it's experiential. You go into, you want to learn a career, you have to do it experientially to assimilate the tools and be able to do things. It's so the same is true with when they say Sufism is created within an individual, that there are things that need to happen within you physiologically, and this is part of learning, that you have to begin to learn what these things are and how to experience them, how to learn what this other finer perceptions are. And the beginning stages are the teaching stories that will begin to educate you, so to speak, or begin to create experiences within you that you can begin to learn more about how this learning occurs. So teaching stories are absolutely critical to use, absolutely critical to use, and to use them to such an extent of that just if you're interested in this, is to write Idries Shah Foundation, and I always refer people to Holly, because that's the kind of guy that I am. I always refer people, from whether it's business or whether to somebody I know. That's the only way to go as far as I'm concerned, and I hope not too many people inundate Holly, but I always refer people to her because I know her. Otherwise, the letters, I don't know how many letters a day they get, or if it'll get lost in the shuffle, I don't know. But anyway, just ask. You want to know more. They're not interested. They don't in you joining a group. They're not interested in you subscribing to something on a monthly basis. If you begin treating this as though it is a religion, you're off base. This is not a religion. It's not something to believe in. If you want to believe in something, they will tell you that's not what they're offering, and go someplace else, because literally they'll tell you. I'm not being rude. That's what they, if you want emotionalism, go find it, because they operate on a cause and effect, pure and simple. These teaching stories have very definitive effects. They're designed to have specific effects. And the changes that one goes through are based on learning certain things and to develop certain abilities, and these are reproducible results. You can, and I'm just saying from my experiences, they will tell you this, and I'm saying that this is true. And I have read, when I wrote and asked for, I was very simple. I just said, look, I want to know more. I've read into Idries Shah's books here, and this was in like 40 years ago, whenever. And I said, I would like to know more. And they wrote back, read all Shah's works. And that's all they said. See, that's it. The one sentence. And so I did it. I just did it, okay? And that's what I'm saying, is that they're not going to induct you into some kind of thing, whatever instruction they give you, just do it. Just do what they tell you to do. And they may tell you to go away, in which case you're going to have to reconsider what you said and exactly what you want. You may not want what they've got to offer, and that's the whole deal, is when you write, is you want to find out what they have to offer, not what you are interested in, because you don't know what they have to offer. I'm telling you that. You certainly do not know what they have to offer. Just from experience, I've been around the block with these guys. I have quite a bit of experience, and I'm sure there's more experiences than I have had. And not just experiences, but I mean in a different way. Anyway, what Idries Shah says in the Sufis and his podcasts and everything, regardless of how strange or it is or seems, I'm just telling you that it's all true. It's been 40 years, and what he says is true. Learning how to learn is, you may not understand what that means, and it's important to try to understand what that means. I've given some indication in terms of the teaching stories, but what happens after that? And, everybody's different, everybody is the same, it's like diets, everybody's got a different diet, but everything's the same. The nutrients are the same. It doesn't matter what country you're from, what diet. It could be Middle Eastern, it could be Western, it could be Italian, or Mediterranean. The nutrients, if you analyze, are the same. And that's the thing that is said about religion. Again, it's kind of like spiritual. There's so many connotations and associations with the word religion that the essence is the same, and that is true. Again, from experience, this is true. A lot of people want to think that their religion is the one and only religion. Well, it may be for them at that time, but once they mature, beyond that, they will find that, whatever. This was about a few things to Westerners approaching the Idries Shah form that he was proffering of Sufism. And I think this is what I'm saying, that when Idries Shah, when the Idries Shah Foundation, when they say their material, it's always couched in Eastern terms. And I'm trying to couch this in as an American encountering this, what one might react to and see and those kinds of things. At this point, I would say that finally that there is one thing, when you hear these things from the East, you have to interpolate them to what experientially what they mean to do. In other words, many people idolize sayings and people. They'll put up pictures of Idries Shah, and they'll put up pictures of Rumi or Jesus or Buddha, and they eulogize these or their sayings. And it's important not to do that because you're dead in the water. You're supposed to use things, put them to use. A good example, and the one I was going to bring up, is made by Jalaluddin Rumi, if I pronounced the first part correctly. And he, this is very useful to put into practice. And that's the whole point of any of this stuff, is to learn how to use it. Now, this is, he says, Rumi says, if silence is genuinely inside of you, it will bring you what you need. Live in silence. And what does this mean, actually, in utilizing it in practice? And why do I bring it up here? Because it's like mathematics. You will always use addition and subtraction. It doesn't matter if you go into astrophysics and do what Stephen Hawking did, okay? If you look at his equations, there's always addition and subtraction there, okay? It doesn't matter what level of mathematics you go to. And it doesn't matter how far you progress in your maturation in your spiritual life. You will always use this, silence, because... for instance, if you are in your apartment and you have the radio going and the TV going and stuff, you will never be able to hear the birds outside. Or if there's some kind of something going on, you won't be able to hear it. And if you have a lot in your daily life, or you're trying to learn these kinds of things, and you've got all this stuff going on in your head, you're talking to yourself, or you're just whatever, as you know, you won't be able to perceive certain other things. Certainly not stuff outside of yourself. I mean, it's just a given. If you have this clear mind, open to stimuli, you'll be better able to do business, to have personal relationships, to whatever, right? And also, when things arise from within you, again, Sufism is the experiential within a human being, individual, then you see you've got things a little more subtle that you've got to learn to be able to perceive. Not learn to be able, you've got just to be able to perceive them. And once you can perceive them, you can begin to learn how to learn about yourself, because there are things that you need to learn internally that are much more subtle than you've been used to, and you've got to be able to make use of them. So as a practical matter, again, this is part of Eastern mysticism, and you see it is not mystical at all. As I said, it is a practical matter. You're going to get as subtle as you want in these very things, and you've got to do. You don't have to, but if you're going to do well, and be able to experience these things, as Idries Shah said, you want to be enlightened, become a human being. And again, you see the lack of real mysticism. It's a very practical matter. But when they talk about being an actualized or a human being or these kinds of things, there is something going on to mature yourself in certain ways, and this being silent within yourself doesn't mean you don't have daily activities and those kinds of things. It just means you learn to be a little more attentive to in subtle things. And you're just going to have to be follow Rumi's advice here along the way. And so I guess so what you can come to realize is that there is no mysticism in Sufism. It's more pragmatic. You've got very specific things to learn, not in a sequential manner, and then you have to utilize these things, tools along the way, and the literature that Idries Shah Foundation has put together of all the stuff that Idries Shah did and recorded will be of assistance, and you don't want to do this on your own all the way. It's not, Westerners, they want to do it yourself, and that isn't possible with this, It's if you're, this is like you're going to learn to travel into outer space. You're going to need a spaceship, and you can just forget trying to build one on your own. That's all. This material that they're proffering has come down through thousands of years, and they've had people like Rumi and Baha'u'llah and Christ and Buddha, and these people have been working on developing these tools and passing it down. And if you think you're going to do this on your own, I mean, well, good luck, because you ain't. And at some point, you do want assistance, and at some point you'll need a teacher. But as Idries Shah says, don't ask for your local franchised incorporated teacher in your neighborhood, and please to be given his name and address or something. That is not the way things work. Again, you're going to have to pick up things along the way. So, I guess one might say, by the time you think you've identified the teacher, he probably already was drawing you to him, so to speak. It's and one would say, for the door to enlightenment is closed for many, the door is open to others. You just you see some of the stuff you're just not going to understand, or other things, but put it in your mind to try, and some of these things over the years will begin to make sense. You're not going to achieve this in 5 minutes. I thought of putting an ad in the paper and putting instant enlightenment, $5 a try. Just as a kind of a humorous thing. Anyway, so learning the practical aspects of, one foot in front of the other, little by little, there are definite things, and learning how to learn is a very important thing to understand. So I want to reiterate that if you feel you will come to believe something, and that is what is being offered, that, if you see this material and you say, well, I believe that, well, it doesn't matter what you believe in this material. It's not a matter of believing anything. If you think that you're starting to believe this stuff, it's the same. You're just creating religion about it. You're just creating a religion out of it, and you're off base. You're off the track. It's always about learning something. There's no belief involved. People so want to believe things. There was an encounter I had with a gentleman, and he was trying to do something for me, trying to be kind or something, and he said, Sean, do you believe in God? And of course, this was a Christian, trying to make a point, and trying to inculcate, in me certain beliefs. And I hesitated because to me, it's not a dichotomous thing, And I hesitated, and of course, he picked up on it. He says, this is a yes or a no question, And obviously, to some people, this is, do you believe or don't you believe, right? And so the second time he said that, I said, he kind of put me on the spot, I'm going to have, So I kind of like, sliding along the wall, I've got to say something, but I don't want to make him ticked off, he's very adamant about this. And I said, well, maybe there's something different, maybe there's something, I said, maybe there's something more, right? And to his credit, he said, well, more, what do you mean? See, he wasn't totally gone. And I said, this is off the top of my head. See, this is nobody taught me this. This just comes from being. And he goes, and I go, well, do you believe in ice cream? And he goes, well, sure. And I said, have you had ice cream? And he says, yeah. And I said, then it's no longer a matter of belief then, is it?